Hi, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Driscoll.
And I'm Jim Kerr.
Coming to you from the History Hut. Welcome to 15 Minutes of Fame. Well, Jim, let's start off on the ice, but actually off the ice in the NHL, where Sidney Crosby and the Pittsburgh Penguins have had an interesting week leading up to the end of their season. Let's start off with the always entertaining but seldom, making any sense Mike Milbury and the ensuing apology he gave.
Yeah, well, after that heated Flyers-Penguins game, which we're sure to see a lot more of in the coming week or so, it featured a whole lot of fighting, a lot of stick work, a lot of that kind of stuff. Milbury came out and said, there's a little punk in Crosby. Because, he dishes it out, but he maybe can't take it or complains when he gets it back. And you saw that with a couple of incidents with Braden Shen, where he gave him a bit of a shot, puck nowhere in sight. Shen gave him a little cross-check on the back on the way back to the benches. Crosby's looking around. And anyway, so Mike Milbury said all this stuff, and he really went in-depth about his hatred for the Penguins, I guess. Apologized a day or so later. But, Crosby did admit that the Flyers bring out the worst in him and the worst in his teammates, and he does a lot more stick work and that when he's playing the Flyers. So it was a whole big thing. But, really, Mike Milbury, that's his game. He goes for the...
Oh, yeah, sorry, dude. That's me.
But is this TSN? Your BlackBerry's going off?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You want
to Mike Milbury goes for that type of headline.
Yeah, that's right.
When do you ever hear about him except for him and Jeremy Roenick arguing on the air or this kind of thing? So, it was part that and part people are just getting frustrated, I think, with some of the things that they're seeing out of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
And I agree, and I think we're going to see a little bit more of this, and maybe it was just everybody knew that this Philly-Pittsburgh thing was going to come up. Mike Milbury, though, we were talking a little bit offline, Kersey. I mean, how do you take that guy seriously? Fine, call him a little punk, but it's tough to take Mike Milbury seriously.
Yeah.
Come on now. Later on that week, it was the New York Rangers coach John Tortorella throwing heat at Crosby and Malkin. Tortorella, to begin with, is a little bit of a loudmouth, doesn't ever really back off on anybody, but what was his deal?
You know what? I'd love to live in his hockey city, but I wouldn't want to be a reporter. Let's put it that way.
No kidding.
He was upset about an ugly knee-on-knee incident in a game between the Rangers and Penguins. Brooks Orpik put his knee out, clipped Derek Stepan. Stepan ended up being okay eventually, but, it was a bit of a dirty play, and he called for some reason, Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin came into this. He called them a couple of whiners. He said the Pens organization is arrogant. He was fined $20,000. That's kind of par for the course, I guess, for him. I think it's $50,000 all year now for torts. Crosby sounds like he's had enough of what he calls the kind of garbage type of comments, but he admits, he was bad when he first broke into the league in terms of chirping the refs. And he also said, too, that, it's the time of year and the teams that it's coming from. It could just be them trying to influence the refs or get under the players' skin. It's kind of like what they do in soccer a little bit. In major European soccer, that the opposing coaches, it's along those lines. The opposing coaches will start throwing out something that seems unrelated in the week leading up to the game, and sometimes it has the effect. So they're probably hoping that, the refs maybe aren't as kind to Crosby and Malkin if they are in the first place, in the upcoming playoff series here. But either way, it's a big war of words going through the media. Crosby kind of quite rightly said that this type of stuff should be played out on the ice and not in the media. But I guess it gives us all something to talk about.
And that's exactly it. At least we'll take it, right? Again, I don't know if we're going to see more of this in the playoffs. I thought your comment, I guess it was Crosby's comment about the fact that he used to whine and maybe has an idea that he doesn't whine as much anymore. That's really funny. I don't know. We'll see. We don't see a whole lot of Crosby and Malkin, other than TSN shows them constantly, but we're still on the West Coast, so we don't see as much as those guys do, and so maybe I've got the wrong idea about Crosby, but he definitely does look like he whines a little bit.
You know how we end this?
How do we end this?
Put a mic on him.
Yeah, there you go. That's not a bad idea. I like that.
I'll pay the pay-per-view to hear him
say
whatever he says. Just secretly put a mic on him.
Yep.
For a stretch of 5 games, then we can all figure it out for ourselves.
Totally. Speaking of coaches getting fined, though, Oilers head coach Tom Renney got himself in a bit of trouble this week. What was going on there?
He was fined 10 large for comments after being asked why the Oilers didn't get many calls or were perceived to have not gotten many calls against the LA Kings. He said, quote, maybe they need Hollywood in the playoffs. End quote.
Interesting.
Good little bit of fire from Renney. I like it.
Well, maybe he's trying to, I don't know, stir up something. There are always rumors about his job and that kind of thing. I mean, he's at the end of his contract, but, good for him. I like Tom Renney. Do you think he's going to be back next year, Jim?
That's a tough one. I mean, I think that they've gone through a number of coaches in the past couple of years, past 3-4 years, and I don't think coaching is the problem. I really don't. And I think that once again, injuries kind of took their toll, important injuries.
Yeah. And
I think you give him another year. Maybe he doesn't want to sign a one-year deal, but you could always sign him to a multi-year deal and get rid of him. Or I don't know. But I think there's still time. I think he's done a lot of good stuff, and I don't think he's lost the room by any stretch.
No.
I feel like there's still work to do there. There's definitely promise coming out of that locker room. A good offseason, a couple of acquisitions here and there could really turn the tide for the team.
Yeah, I agree. Well, before we get into the playoff matchups for this year, did you see Ryan Clough get away with a little bit of a strange interference on Thursday night?
Yeah, you don't see that very often, but LA was rushing the puck up the ice, and he played the puck from the bench.
Like he was on the bench, and he gets up and just plays the puck.
Just leans over and gives it a tap. And it just touched it off of Jarrett Stoll's stick, and he instead of continuing forward, and he admitted later he maybe should have just tried to keep playing, but he turned around with arms up and hey! But nobody on the ice, referee-wise, saw it. And Clough kind of denied it after the game, saying, I'd have to see the replay. I don't know. But he sheepishly admitted it the following day.
Weirdest thing.
You don't see that very often.
No.
Also, Jeff, I think we have to give a shout-out to a couple of trophy winners.
Oh?
Kenny Malkin with the Art Ross.
Yes.
Steve Stamkos got 60.
And
the Rocket Richard. And Elliott and Halak out of St. Louis pick up the Jennings.
Yeah, I mean, that was unbelievable. The St. Louis tandem there, they were out of this world there, especially in the end of the season. So, absolutely amazing. Sitting here, do you think, talking about any other trophies, do you think any Oilers have chances of getting anything this year?
Well, I think you always have to give consideration to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for the Calder. He's played 20 less games than the guy he's...
Landeskog, yeah.
I believe they're tied in points, or at the very least, they're very close. You know what? In my head, playing 20 less games and still being there point-wise makes up for a plus-minus that's not as good as Landeskog's, or, makes up for other qualities, but it sounds like Landeskog is getting a lot of the votes. Granted, they haven't voted yet, but...
Still,
it sounds like the general consensus is that Gabriel Landeskog is going to be the guy, and I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins has done more than enough to be considered, especially given how important he is to his current team.
No,
and I think Jordan Eberle's got an outside shot at the Lady Byng. He had a great season, didn't take any stupid penalties pretty much all year. There's a shot, but once again, I mean, the Oilers aren't at the forefront of everyone's mind, so.
No.
They might be an afterthought, unfortunately.
Well, let's go over real quick. Let's go over the Eastern Conference and Western Conference playoff matchups. And Jim, why don't you give me a little bit on who you think is going to win, and if there's anything really big in either of those matchups that you want to talk about. So let's start on the Eastern side. The Ottawa Senators are going to play the New York Rangers. That's the 8-1 series. Jim, is there any way that the Senators have any chance of beating the Rangers?
Well, it's an interesting one because the Senators actually have a lot of firepower, and they've got pretty good goaltending when Craig Anderson is on. But I got to think that the New York Rangers, the way they've played this season, they were top team in the Eastern Conference, but I must not have seen them enough, or we don't see them enough out here because I don't, you don't really think of them as a number one team. But they had an outstanding regular season, and with a guy like John Tortorella behind the bench, you got to think they'll be keeping up that intensity into the playoffs. So I'm going to go with the Rangers, but the Senators, they could be a bit of a dark horse. It feels funny calling them a dark horse just because of the great players they have.
That's right.
But, at the same time, I think the New York Rangers have this. They've got a bit more grit, I think.
Sure, it would be nice to see Alfie win the cup there. Well, let's talk about the 7-2. The Washington Capitals snuck in there against the Boston Bruins. What are you thinking on that one?
I just don't see the Capitals as a good playoff team.
No.
And, though there was a year when maybe I thought they were, but they don't seem to show up ever in the playoffs.
No.
And the Boston Bruins, they're a hard team to play against. They've got good goaltending. They've got, Marty Turco's gone, but they've still got good goaltending. They very, very strong offense, very balanced attack, great defense. Like they're a pretty solid team, and of course they know what it takes to go the distance. And they didn't have an easy road to the final last year, so they know what it takes to really grind it out. And I think the Capitals are going to be their first victim.
Absolutely. Well, how about the 6-3? And this isn't exactly 6-3 because the Devils actually have more points than the Florida Panthers. But what do you think about that series?
That's a weird one. I think that's going to be one of the tough ones to call because the Florida Panthers haven't been in the playoffs since the year 2000 when we thought the world was going to end.
That's right.
And, I mean, they're another team that's kind of snuck up on us. They're a pretty balanced club. They were a big surprise early on. A lot of people didn't, and myself included, didn't expect to see what we saw out of there. But Versteeg had a great year there. Thomas Fleischmann had a great year there. That'll be a tough one though, and I think whether or not this is Martin Brodeur's swan song, I hope that he has a strong enough playoffs that he at least takes him a couple rounds in and gets a few more stats on his on the playoff side of his sheet. But I'm going to go with the Devils here. Yeah,
good. I think so too. And then I guess the series that I know I'm most jacked about seeing is the Philly-Pittsburgh series, the 5-4. What do you think about that?
Ooh.
Yeah.
This will be a dandy. This is going to be one of those ones that you wish was the conference final.
Big time.
But, the Philadelphia Flyers have had great success in Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh Penguins don't seem to... They're not themselves when they play the Flyers, and I think that's a big, big plus for Philly because if you can get a team off their game, and a team like Pittsburgh, that's how you beat them. You get them off their game. If Philadelphia comes out with the same kind of, intangible quality they came out with when there was that big a week or two ago, the one that Mike Milbury was talking about, then I think they've got a really good chance to end Pittsburgh's season way, way, way early. A lot of it depends on how able Evgeny Malkin, Sidney Crosby, players like that are, James Neal, to do what they want to do. You got to get in their face. You got to tie up their sticks, make it really tough for them to be the amazing players they are. But at the same time, Philadelphia's got some great players themselves, and this is going to be a series of momentum. And if they win Game 1, they're going to have to really, really focus on keeping that momentum for a couple of days for Game 2 and so on and so forth. But I'm going to say Philadelphia just because I really don't want Pittsburgh to go very far.
Yeah, I understand. And I think that's the sentiment of a lot of the league. I'm going with Pittsburgh. I think this is the only matchup that Pittsburgh needs to worry about, to tell you the truth. I think Pittsburgh gets through Philly and has the mental fortitude, like you were talking about, to get through. I think that's it. I think they win the cup, to tell you the truth. Let's go to the western side, and let's start with the 8-1, Los Angeles versus Vancouver. Vancouver wins another President's Trophy, Jim, on their way to maybe winning a cup this year.
Yeah, and I got to say that I don't see Vancouver losing to Los Angeles. But the LA Kings are a good team, and they've got some pretty good goaltending. I think this is going to come down to goaltending for Vancouver because there's no doubting, what they can do offensively, what they can do defensively, what they can do from behind, what they can do when they build up a lead. But goaltending is always kind of that, and playoff goaltending's been an issue for them. Let's be honest. So the fans are going to be all over Roberto Luongo if he has a bad period, never mind a bad game. And then, maybe we see a situation where they throw Corey Schneider in there, and if they ride Schneider for a couple of rounds, does that spell the end for Luongo? There's all kinds of questions, but that's for another episode. But I think this comes down to goaltending for the Vancouver Canucks. And for LA, I mean, they have to capitalize. If the goaltending is starting to look weak, throw everything at Roberto Luongo. But it's going to be a goalies battle, really a one-sided goalies battle.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Bobby Lou against himself.
Exactly.
Starring Roberto
Luongo as Bobby Lou.
himself.
Let's move on to the 7-2 series, the San Jose Sharks versus the aforementioned St. Louis Blues. I don't know how we get past the Blues and their goaltending, Jim.
Yeah, and here's a thought about this series. The San Jose Sharks, what would you say about them in the playoffs? What would you say, one word that comes to mind when you think of the Sharks and the playoffs?
Choke.
Yeah. Usually when they are associated with that, they're a number 1, maybe a number 2.
Yeah.
This year they're coming in at a number 7, and that might actually be a blessing in disguise for them, because if they lose to the number 2 Blues, you're not going to say, oh, they choked.
Right.
You're going to say, well, they lost to the team that was higher than them. But we all have this idea in our head that San Jose's been good for a long time, so they should be a team that can beat St. Louis. And maybe without the pressure of having that, oh my God, everyone's going to call us chokers if we lose. Maybe that's big for them this year. I don't know. And the St. Louis Blues, they're another kind of enigma for me, because they were a bad team. New coach comes in, changes everything. They rocket up the standings. Here they are, the number 2 seed heading into the playoffs. And I mean, you could say they're not battle tested, because we haven't really seen them in this situation in a long time. Yeah. So it's a tough one. They could grind it out. San Jose could grind it out, but this is one that I'm gonna kind of go out on a limb and say San Jose, because I'm kind of hoping, because I love Joe Thornton. I think he's a great player, and they got quite a few good players on that team. I'd like them to maybe exercise some of those demons.
It would be nice to see. No, I agree. Let's move on to the 6-3, the Chicago Blackhawks versus, maybe, we say this every year, Jim, maybe the last season of the Phoenix Coyotes.
Could be. Mike Smith.
Smith.
That's 2 words that you'll hear a lot probably in this series. The guy had probably the best final week of anyone in the history of the NHL.
No kidding.
I think 3 shutouts and 2 one-goal games. The way he's playing right now, they could ride him all the way past this. I'm not going to say all the way to the final, but they could ride him all the way past the Chicago Blackhawks, who are a very tough team to play against. If they get Jonathan Toews back, that makes things interesting, but I don't think he has a timetable yet for his return. Another concussion-related injury there. But I feel like I have to say Chicago, because the Phoenix Coyotes aren't a team that I associate with winning playoff series.
Winning anything.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're playing very strong right now, and I think this one could potentially go to 7. But I'm going to say Chicago.
Nice. And how about your beloved Detroit Red Wings against the Nashville nobody's beloved Predators?
It's a tough one. The Nashville's a team that they quietly grinded out a great season again. Surprise. Barry Trotz is, got to eventually go down as one of the best coaches of this era anyways. I mean, the level of consistency that team has played at, with not a lot of flash, not a lot of high-priced players, but they've got the goaltending. They've got a couple of the top defensemen in the NHL. Alex Radulov has come in and played pretty damn well for the Nashville Predators. And he's also helping raise the game of some of the other guys. The Kostitsin brothers have been okay secondary scoring. They find a way to win. That said, the Detroit Red Wings, I mean, I absolutely adore how this team plays, and that's why I like them so much. The skill set of some of these players, and they're a very, I feel they're a fairly unique team, and just in terms of the way they move the puck and use the puck. It's a tough one, because it's two I would say fairly different styles against each other. It's kind of like an MMA. Yeah. A jiu-jitsu against a wrestler or something.
That's right.
But I'd love for the Detroit Red Wings to go through. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nashville Predators stop them in this first round here.
Oh.
The Preds are a good team. You can't it's not like they're playing a crappy 8th seed.
That's true.
This is a good team with good goaltending. But I think both teams have the necessary weapons to advance, and that's all I'm going to say.
I like it. Can't actually come out against his beloved Red Wings.
Why don't you make a prediction on that one? You can take.
I think Detroit's going to. I agree with all the stuff you said about that. Barry Trotz's an amazing coach. I think I just don't think you can continue to grind in the playoffs too much. I don't care how much Alexander Radulov increases your game. Pavel Datsuk's going to come in and take care of all that. So
good man.
Yeah, I think I don't see how you don't pick Detroit in that, and let you do your thing. That's okay. Those are the playoff matchups as picked by Kersey. Let's come back in a few weeks or a week and a half or however long it is and see how those went.
And point and laugh.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to the GABBYs now, Jim. These are the good and bad by you. How about a good to Phoenix Coyotes goaltender Mike Smith? We were just talking about him. Made an NHL record 54 saves in a shutout last Tuesday, breaking Craig Anderson's regular season record. The shutout was, in fact, the third in a row for Smith. And it's worth mentioning that they all came in very key games for the Coyotes going into the playoffs.
Yeah, huge. Like he just took that team, on his shoulders and stopped everything that came their way. Really. And the other two games they played, he only let in one goal. Like that's a stretch of games that wow.
Not bad.
Speaking of the Coyotes,
yep.
How about a good to Fort Saskatchewan native Ray Whitney for notching his 1,000th career point in a game this past week? Not only did he get the milestone, but he actually scored a goal 40 seconds later. Attaboy.
Absolutely. Ex-Oilers stick boy, Ray Whitney. Good for him. Glad to see him still in the league. I think we have to give a good to Canadian slugger Joey Votto, who signed a 10-year contract extension with the Cincinnati Reds, the longest guaranteed contract in Major League Baseball history. All told, the deal is worth about $225 million. You'll remember that was about the same amount of money that A-Rod got back in the day as well, but that was a little bit of a different contract. But that's a lot of money, Jim.
I thought you were going to say that you filled out on your taxes when you were doing them recently.
Right. That's how much I get paid for this. You get paid that for this, right?
Yeah, I mean, not like with money, but like with good feelings.
Good feelings.
And that's what you mean, right?
That's totally what I mean.
Okay.
I feel like a millionaire.
Let's give a bad to Alistair Overeem.
Yeah, let's.
Failed a drug test last week at a random test at a press conference. Apparently, he was well over the normal rate for testosterone. UFC President Dana White said he was, quote, beyond pissed. And I wouldn't like that guy mad at me. I really wouldn't like that guy to be upset at me. But he says that Overeem told him he was clean to his face. And so he's even more mad. But this type of news seems to be a constant in our world of sports, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. No kidding, he's a little high on testosterone. Have you seen this gentleman?
He is massive.
The guy is huge.
I remember when I first saw Brock Lesnar I saw him for a WWF commercial or something, and I was like, what is that?
No kidding.
Is this anime? Is that a drawing? That's a man.
Oh, totally. Let's give a bad to the Orlando Magic, Jim, where there is something weird happening with the coach and the star player. Did you see this? This is kind of weird. Stan Van Gundy told reporters this week the management told him that Dwight Howard wanted him fired. So Howard crashes the interview and then denies or deflected all the questions. Who knows what's going on there? It's a weird situation.
Yeah, and the GM came out after that and said, no, he never asked for it. So
what's Van Gundy doing?
I don't know if this is just like they're having a laugh behind the scenes and they're trying to start something or they're trying to deflect attention from something else, but it's very, very weird.
Very weird.
Howard comes in and puts his arm around him and he's, hey, coach, what's our focus? It was like he was talking, well, he talks down to everyone because he's like 9 foot 100, but he crashes the interview and goes, what's our focus? What's our only focus right now? And Van Gundy's like, the New York Knicks. And then he walked away. It was really awkward. I felt weird about it watching it. I want to go somewhere else. Just strange. Finally, though, Jeff, a bad to the University of Kentucky fans who rioted after the school won the NCAA hoops tourney. One guy was even shot in the leg and needed his foot amputated.
Brutal.
Which just random. And in case you missed it, Jeff, Kentucky beat Kansas 67-59 in the big game. And on the women's side, Baylor beat Notre Dame for the title and a 40-0 season.
Yeah, we've talked about Baylor before on 15 Minutes of Fame. They're just absolutely dominant. But seriously, stop rioting to, come on.
Hey, we won. Let's beat up a bunch of police officers and light stuff on fire. and get pepper sprayed and arrested and charged with stuff. Woo!
Sounds like a good time to me.
Like if you were to say, what should we do after we win? Oh, we should go party.
Right.
Or, hey, why don't we break a bunch of stuff,
flip over some cars,
ruin our lives for the next probably year while we're in and out of court, probably get pepper sprayed or tasered or arrested or beat up. Oh, maybe we can light a car on fire and try and jump it.
I choose that. All right.
Yeah, it's like, really, man? Really? This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs.
That's right. The classic 15 minutes of fame anti-drug ad. I like that. That's good. The punchline this week, folks, is the Baltimore Orioles, who might not be ready for the regular season coming up, Jim.
Jeff,
yes.
Fed up with MLB competition, the Orioles took on a community college team.
That's good. Must have been a highlight for the community college team.
Must have been because the community college team won.
Yes.
Baltimore Orioles were beaten by the State College of Florida. Ooh. My God. That's not a good way to go into the regular season. You know? Well, we had a good 30-game preseason where we ended it by losing to a
community college.
Not even like the NCAA champs.
No.
like King's College. Not that King's College, but you know what I mean.
No, I got you. Yeah, exactly. No kidding. Well, Jim, and we always like to bring these up. Let's add this to our 15 minutes of fame. Weird injuries from baseball. Rockies pitcher Josh Outman sprained his oblique from puking, Jim.
Yeah, food poisoning. That'll do it every time.
Food poisoning. Yeah, that's what I got the last time too. Yeah, food poisoning. Well, folks, that's our 15 minutes of fame up for this week. Join us again next week for a whole new 15 minutes of fame. In the meantime, I'm Jeffrey Driscoll.
And I'm less hairy than I was last week.
Have a good week, folks.